Welcome into Beyond the Mark, typically talking sports, but not today. No, it's all about P. Diddy, the trial. We're 2 weeks in, and my very good friend Nevin Shapiro and I, we've been covering it. We thank you so much for watching, subscribing, commenting, all the things. We're really thrilled. The feedback that we've gotten has been outstanding, and we've got another special guest joining us today. Nevin, you ready to start it?
Love it. Let's go.
All right, let's get right to it. And you've known this gentleman for quite a while. Pat
Yeah.
Franklin joins us on the program. Detective, chief polygraph examiner, has been doing this for 30 years. Has been hired by the police, hired by attorneys, hired by special investigators. One of the best in the business. That's what we've been doing throughout this podcast, whether it's attorneys for either side. And now really cool that we've got a detective and an investigator on the program. I love it. So Pat, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome into the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I've been watching many of your interviews, and especially with Nevin, and it's very insightful, very good stuff.
Well, I think it's really important before we start diving into all that took place this week in the Diddy trial and of course recapping it and looking forward to the following week. Of course, the trial gets started again on Tuesday because Monday is Memorial Day. I think it's important for our viewers and our listeners to understand your relationship with Nevin. Right. And another thing is, my friends and coworkers who are watching this podcast ask me a lot of questions about Nevin, like
Right.
why him?
Yep.
What makes him so special? What makes him so unique that you're doing this show with Nevin in regard to the Diddy trial, and really considering that you guys have known each other for so long,
Right.
and how instrumental you were in Nevin's situation.
Yes.
I think who better to have on not only to talk about the Diddy trial, but to
Right.
give our viewers out there a little bit more insight on Nevin. So share with us how you two met.
Okay. So I was just by happenstance, I had a meeting with one of Nevin's corporate attorneys, who was also a childhood friend, and that was Neil Levinson. And I happened to be leaving, and it was in the afternoon. And Neil says to me, "Hold on a minute. I have a client coming up. I think you might be able to provide some help with him in his business. He's a real up and comer, very successful businessman, and he's on his way now. Can you wait?" So I waited 5 or 10 minutes, and in walks Nevin Shapiro, whom I met for the first time at that afternoon. And it was probably around 1995 or so. And Nevin and I shook hands. I stood there. He goes, "Hold on a minute." He conducted his business. I waited in the hallway. He conducted his business very briefly with Neil and comes out and says, "Come on, I want to grab a cup of coffee with you." So we walked down to News Cafe on Lincoln Road in Miami Beach, and we had coffee. We sat there, and he says, "Let me have your phone number." So I gave him my phone number. We start talking, and he's explaining, and we're talking about, he's giving me some background on his business, where he's at, and how he would be able to plug me into what he's doing. He says, I see value in maybe you could help me in my business, what we're doing. And so we sat there for 20, 30 minutes having coffee, finished. I got up and I said, "Oh, let me give you my number." He goes, "I got your number." I go, "Yeah, but you didn't write it down." He goes, "No, I already know it." And he cited the number back to me right off the top of his head. So I figured he's a pretty sharp cat at that point. And from there, I began doing due diligence on Nevin's prospective clients and investors and lenders. Nevin wanted to only deal with people legitimate, with no criminal history, no records, no IRS tax liens, no tax warrants, no bankruptcies. He just wanted to make sure that everybody that he did business and took money from was straight up, and there wouldn't be any legal implications for joining them in a business venture. And that went on for almost 10 years or so. And then Nevin finds himself, he believes, in a potential criminal case. And then my role changed. I was really more administrative, doing background investigations, criminal history checks, things like that, on behalf of Nevin and his company, and checking employees, prospective employees, lenders, things like that. And then my role shifted because now Nevin calls me, and he had somebody on the phone who was pretty well in their cups, was sobbing. And Nevin calls me. He'd never called me on a Friday evening before. He calls me up. He says, "Pat, you got to listen to this. This is unbelievable." So we then go on a three-way call with this guy who Nevin had been doing a lot of business with. And the guy's basically sobbing and crying that he apologizes for what he's going to have to do, and you'll have to understand the position I'm in, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know who this is, and I don't really know what he's talking about. But Nevin knew. And the guy didn't make much sense to me. But when I got off the line, and Nevin calls me right back and says, "This guy is basically threatening me." So I said, "Well, he seems to have a trust in you because he's saying a lot of things that he's going to have to do, but it seems he doesn't want to do it." I said, "Can you fly them down here?" Meaning this guy and his wife, because they were the ones doing business with Nevin, and she was doing the books. So Nevin flew them down to Miami, just like I asked, the following week. And I met with this guy, and I met with his wife. I interviewed them, took sworn statements from them both. And I remember saying to the guy, "Why are you doing this?" And he says, "Well, I told you, this other guy's putting food on the table, and Nevin cut me off." I go, No. Why are you signing that affidavit?" He says, "Because Nevin doesn't deserve this. He didn't do anything wrong." Same thing with the wife. There was an incident that happened where I suspected that Nevin's attorneys were not looking out for Nevin's best interest, and I warned Nevin, "If you stick with these guys, you're going to prison. And if you stick with these guys, I'm off the case." And Nevin, at the time, he said, "Pat, they're my attorneys. I have to defer to them." And I said, "Okay." And so I said, "Nevin, I'll always help you." Remember, Nevin's credit with me and established relationship is going back more than 10 years at this point. He put a lot of trust and a lot of money into these lawyers. So anyway, fast forward, I'm off the case, and then about a year later, I get a call out of the blue from the guy's wife. She says, "It's urgent I meet with you. I have something to tell you about Nevin, and I'm very ill, and if I don't make it, I don't want this on my conscience." So I'm off the case, but I can't in good conscience abandon Nevin. So I meet with this lady in her house in Miramar, and she did not look like the lady from a year before. She indicated she was suffering from ovarian cancer. She had a terrible pallor. She was when I walked in, it was pretty hot, and she's shivering. She sits back on the couch, wrapped up in a blanket. Terrible jaundice. Her eyes, just terrible. And she says, "I have to tell you something that nobody's going to believe, but I'm telling you. And I have to tell you that, first off, Nevin didn't know what we were doing. Nevin was our last victim. Furthermore," she says, "and I know nobody's going to believe Nevin because he's such a wheeler dealer. He's so smart. But I want you to know that we were taking the funds Nevin was wiring us, and we were funding dope deals with that money." And she says, "And I know nobody's going to believe he didn't know, but he didn't."
Wow.
That's
By the
what I
way,
do.
Anita, those are the people that she's referring to are the ones the government charged me with 62 victims.
So,
Just to show you how these people operate.
so I called Nevin and I said, Nevin, look, now I refused to go to that law office, but I said to Nevin, look, you gotta get this lady, you gotta pick her up and drive her down to the law office. You gotta get a video deposition. He goes, why video? I said, because it's basically a deathbed confession, and I want people to see her condition, what she looks like. Because if she pulls through, great. If not, it's a deathbed confession, and those are readily admissible as evidence. So Nevin does that and takes her down. Now, in retrospect, I wish I was there because it was a very lackluster questioning. It didn't have the impact like, why are you contacting us now? And explaining that she believed she was dying and she didn't want that on her conscience. And it was there to clear Nevin. She tried to clear Nevin. The husband wasn't there. I think they were separated at the time. I don't exactly know, but he wasn't there.
Anita, my attorneys had a video confession of the people that stole my lender's money and did not come forward with it.
And then they lost the videotape, supposedly. They're unable to find it or track it. Nevin paid for it. It belongs to Nevin. I mean,
Just out of curiosity, are these attorneys still practicing, Nevin?
Not only are they still practicing, one of them is the lead legal analyst on a major network.
Yeah,
you see him weekly.
He's a regular contributor. Mm-hmm. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
Oh yeah, this is coming out, Anita. This story is, and the reason why, like any of the guests that or the viewers that you have on for our podcasts, and when they're, what's this guy's role? What does he know? I was in the same seat this guy Diddy is currently in, except he should be there. I shouldn't have been there.
Right. Right.
Is that and Pat, off air before we started the program,
Mm-hmm.
you said nobody better than Nevin to discuss what's happening in this Diddy trial. Is that what you're referring to?
What I mean is, for example, prosecutors don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to get Sean Combs. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. No, it doesn't go like that. First of all, especially the federal government, the FBI, I don't know if you know this, they don't just start working a case. They don't just all of a sudden arrest people. City cops do that, state cops. The federal government, the FBI gets information. They corroborate as much as they can from their informant or their complainant. They present it to the Department of Justice prosecutors, and they approve moving forward with the case. And that's when they dig in. That's when they do electronic surveillance. They do warrants. They interview people. That's when that really kicks off. This Sean Combs case took at least a year to put together because it's very painstaking to do right, and they do it right. They don't lose, ever.
Well,
Maybe even when they're wrong, they don't lose.
It's interesting
Right.
because again, the questions that I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
are, those that aren't familiar with law enforcement, right? Is, well, what's the difference? Everybody's saying like, this is the feds, this
Mm-hmm.
is
Sure.
a federal trial as opposed to a criminal trial.
Right.
What's the difference, and why is this more significant?
Well, first of all, the resources are unlimited, the federal government. And this case, I would figure that whenever that hotel security tape was released of Combs beating up that girlfriend, his girlfriend at the time,
Cassie Ventura.
right, I would venture to say that the release of that tape is probably when we can figure this case was already started, had already begun against Combs. That's my figuring on this case. The releasing of that tape isn't just by happenstance. There's a reason that was released. It's very compelling, even just of itself. Just show somebody that. and it's very compelling. It paints a picture. Now, where's the parallel with Nevin? Well, I can tell you right now, being that no prosecutor just woke up one day and said, I'm going to get Combs, it's one of two things. It's either somebody seeking revenge or very frightened of him, but probably seeking revenge that came forward with information, powerful, or somebody they already nabbed high on the food chain that said, I can make a deal. How would you like to get Sean Combs? He does this, and those are the two ways this happens. Now there is ongoing social media. There are investigators assigned to monitor all of our comments on social media platforms. Uh, say something explosive enough, like we just saw with the former FBI director, and you got the cops banging on your door. So the government is actively monitoring all of our social media. So in the relevance to Nevin is here we have a confidential informant, either somebody seeking revenge or somebody who already got nabbed and is willing to give up Combs to make a good deal and had a more attractive target for the government. And
Which one do you think it is, Nevin?
I think it's I think there's a revenge factor here, and I think it's being pushed from a corporate level. Is my intuition.
His adult beverage company, Ciroc?
I'm just I wouldn't. I don't think it's a coincidence.
Okay. Understandably.
we don't know
Understandably.
enough until the case is over. We'll
Yeah,
learn a lot on
yeah,
who did what,
yeah,
how,
and
what was the catalyst for this case?
yeah. Let me
That's
let me
what
say
we don't
something.
know.
Let me say something, please. So, Anita, like when we started this, the very first time, I said, "Listen, it's going to start with. There's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows. It's going to go up. It's going to go down." And then we had the conversation with Kathy Fleming, and then Judy, then of course Mark Eilish, and they all said because they're defense attorneys and two of them former prosecutors. We they all agreed like you're gonna see like, oh, which way is this going? And then all of a sudden, oh wow, that makes sense. You have to let this whole thing play out. Can I give you that answer? I think that answer is inevitably going to get revealed as far as where did this come from, or
Mhm,
there's going to be enough recognition of others like
mhm,
this is where that came from.
mhm.
And that's how a federal case goes.
Yes.
That's how a federal case goes. The government's not going to come out and say, listen, here's our playbook.
Mhm,
They're just going to start playing chess,
mhm,
and you got to hope you can move with them.
mhm.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And yeah, does Puffy have a big defense? Man, he's got a big defense. But let me tell you something. He's when you look at the United States versus Nevin Shapiro, it's you versus a country.
Mhm,
That's what Sean Combs is looking at.
mhm,
He's fighting the unlimited power of this animal.
mhm, mhm.
There's no other way to say it.
And you have to guess when you're sitting in the chair that Nevin was sitting in or Combs, you really have to guess what do they really have? What do they know? How far does this go? Because they're they want you to lie, basically. They want you to lie. That's the trap. So you really
Um,
have to be careful.
Pat, I've asked a number of our guests, if they thought that Diddy should have accepted the plea deal. And again, from what I understand, what's been reported is the federal government not only offered one but two plea deals, and he turned them both down.
Mhm,
Now, granted, you're talking about a 55-year-old man. We don't know what that plea deal was.
mhm,
Some of our attorneys that we guess that we've had on are assuming that it's somewhere in the 15 to 20-year range. At that point in time, if he did accept it and he
mhm,
got out, he'd be 70, 75
mhm.
years old in that
Right.
realm. He's got a boatload of money, so why the heck not try to fight it,
Yeah.
right? Like that has been their response.
Right.
Do you agree with that? Do you feel that Diddy should have accepted a plea deal?
He's going to be sorry he didn't.
Okay.
And because now, at some point, this becomes personal because you have a judge, you have a jury, you have prosecutors, and they're all put out now because now they got to put on their case and they're being challenged. It's like, I dare you. That's how it's perceived. We all know you have the right, there's a presumption of innocence and all that, but that all goes by the wayside. If you don't take the deal, the judge warns you, if you're convicted, I'm going to throw the book at you. So they really make you think about it.
But we have somebody on here that did take the deal and still got the book thrown at him.
Yeah.
Well, he was
Yeah.
without representation. He was left stranded. He was abandoned.
Yeah.
He didn't
And
know
that's a
what-
great point,
he didn't even
Anita.
know- He didn't even know what he was pleading to.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mhm.
And I think it's important
That is the point.
again, and let's rewind to
Mhm.
what Kathy shared with us
Mhm.
on our first episode or second episode, and that is the prosecution can only recommend to the judge, right?
Well, right.
Right. Like, so
Yes.
please explain that further.
So, I mean, the judge typically will go along with whatever the prosecution is seeking. They usually don't deviate too much from that. In Nevin's case, there was a lot of media hype, a lot of negative press, like with Combs. This is all setting it up. This is all, unless a juror is living under a rock, they've all seen that security tape. I mean, it's very compelling, just in and of itself. But to answer your question, Nevin's case was an aberration as far as accepting a plea deal and then getting the book thrown at you. But Nevin was abandoned. I mean, Nevin was already set up. I've spoken to Nevin's agent on his case, and he said, if I knew those affidavits existed, I was in Nevin's attorney's office interviewing Nevin. If they had shown me that, I wouldn't have arrested him.
Wow.
The affidavit sat in their drawer.
You'll see the movie, Anita. Don't worry.
I want a cameo, Nevin. Like when they hey, Nevin back in college.
Good.
When he played football with that really good female football player, Anita Marks. Like, I want that cameo, dude. I want that cameo. Anyway, all right. Let's dive into it. The P. Diddy trial. It is the conclusion of week 2. The jurors broke for the weekend. It is Memorial Day weekend, so they're not back in action until Tuesday. But let's recap what happened this week. Dawn Richard, former member of the Danity Kane group, came out with her testimony saying that she saw P. Diddy hit Cassie over the head with a hot skillet because she wasn't making eggs for him fast enough. Also have assistants for P. Diddy, David James, who saw a lot of really horrific things. George Kaplan, another assistant as well, who was an assistant for P. Diddy for 15 months, but had to quit because everything that he was seeing in regard to the abuse and what he was seeing with Cassie and other people, he couldn't handle. He just wanted a foot in to get into the music industry and thought this would be a good avenue for him, but couldn't take it anymore. So after 15 months, he had to quit. So right there, we're talking about a music artist who P. Diddy was in total control of her career, as well as 2 assistants who went to the stand as witnesses this week to testify and collaborate and confirm all that we heard from Cassie Ventura the week before.
Right.
Pat, how damaging is that to the defense?
Well, I know, I'm not in the prediction business, but he's likely to get convicted and there's going to be an appeal. He'll probably exhaust his rights to appeal. And I think the relevance of this stuff is got to be lined up with what exactly was he charged with, because this is very damaging as far as character goes, setting the profile, because they're painting a picture for the jury to dislike the defendant. That's really what they do. My question is, how aligned are those things with what he's actually charged with? And this is all designed, again, to paint him in a bad light, to put him in a bad light, to secure the conviction, which no doubt they will.
Nevin, last week we were talking about, the defense and how they were portraying Cassie as, not necessarily a victim, but, this was an abusive relationship both ways.
Right.
David James, again, one of Diddy's assistants, was said that he was having a conversation with Cassie, and this is what she said: I can't get out. Mr. Combs oversees so much of my life. He controls my music career. He pays for my apartment. He gives me an allowance, essentially a salary. I can't leave him. Right. So again, not only, are these witnesses coming to the stand to confirm and collaborate what we heard from Cassie, but also explaining a lot of people didn't understand, and this was the narrative coming out of last week, like, he was so horrific to you, why didn't you leave? And so, the conversations of Diddy's assistants with her, I think, are relevant in this case.
Yeah. So when I as like we keep saying, you got to let the case play out and let the witnesses all come through. Cassie, I believe that the feds are really trying to make the prosecution they're trying to paint this picture of Diddy. Like they're not warrant their case isn't based specifically around Cassie.
Mm-hmm.
They're painting the framework
Mm-hmm.
of a criminal enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
that this is a pattern that this guy does. In other words, they're saying Cassie's the main star in this. She's the star in this play,
Mm-hmm.
in this production, but there's many other stars
Mm-hmm.
also and cast the characters that are here.
Right.
And that's what the Rico Act really is. That's where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning they're showing this guy, this is his pattern. There's relevant conduct here. This is a continuous criminal enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
The reason why Cassie's so crucial is because you can't unsee that video.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you use the word enterprise, because George Kaplan, again, one of the assistants that testified this week, shared a story where they were on Diddy's private jet. He attacked Cassie on the jet, and the door flung open. She was on the floor, and she was, aren't you all watching what's happening here? Nobody's going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And George Kaplan said, nobody did anything. They shut the door. They went to the opposite
Yeah.
side of the jet, and they continued to hear screaming and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, Pat, what does that confirm? Is that, that there, that, it wasn't just Diddy. Like, he had an organization, and all his assistants just catered to anything and everything he did.
Even his terror was organized. That's how he was terrorizing people and intimidating people and controlling lives through his terror.
Fear factor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, controlling the money, their lives, their careers. It's all, and using terror and fear.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities to this Harvey Weinstein situation, Anita. Like, there's not two obviously different demographics, but similar in mindset in controlling and coercing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One guy used the power of his position in Hollywood. The other guy may have used weapons, whatever fear tactics that are being described in this courtroom.
A few other witnesses, and again, apparently 16 so far has testified, but a few others this week that I think are really, really important that I want to tee up for you gentlemen. One is Dawn Hughes, who is a psychologist. She testified in regard to the tactics that abusers use quote unquote, if you're going against someone who has wealth and access and privilege, you begin to think, who is going to protect me? Who is going to believe me? Now, apparently, she never met Cassie. She didn't interview Cassie, but the prosecution did call her to the stand to share what, psychologically victims like Cassie are thinking and go through when they're with somebody of that type of power.
Right.
I think really the most crucial and important witness this week was Kid Cudi, right?
Yes.
Agreed.
Who allegedly,
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
not allegedly,
Mhm.
both Cassie and him both admitted that they had a fling. They were dating at one point in time. Obviously, we could only imagine Diddy was not happy with that.
Mhm.
Shortly after he found out about the relationship, allegedly somebody broke into Kid Cudi's LA home, went through his Christmas gifts, opened them, left them around the house. Also locked his dog in his bathroom.
Mhm.
And then a few weeks later, allegedly, gotta say it,
Yeah.
set his car on fire outside of his residence.
Right.
Pat, I want to come back to you.
Mhm.
In the prosecution's case and trying to prove racketeering, I
Mhm.
feel this is the strongest testimony we've heard so far.
Probably so, and it is relative to Combs creating dependency. The people fearful of leaving can't make it without him. This is a conscious effort on any abuser to create that dependency. No privacy, cutting them off from other people, especially family. In case of women, usually mothers and sisters, because their complaints frequently are confided. And so these abusers will look to sever those relationships in order to enhance the dependency that the victims have upon them. And again, it's
Nevin,
all organized.
Nevin, your thoughts on Kid Cudi's testimony this week?
Explosive. Absolutely explosive. I mean, I'll ask you, Pat, does this seem like a coincidence to you?
Not hardly. No,
Right.
no.
So they could say, well, you can't prove Mr. Combs was there, this and that. Listen, we're in the real world. This isn't like make believe,
If
right? You're talking serious stuff here.
if you were to put together a list of all the people that Combs has helped, in quotations, you'll find there's your list of victims.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Nita, to answer your question, explosive testimony from Kid Cudi. Um, like, like that opens the door. See, they're looking to once you pierce the corporate veil, is typically the terminology. They got to pierce the domestic abuse and go next level
Hmm.
to that Rico.
Hmm.
Because when you get they're warm right now. They're warm.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
establishing it. We don't know what's coming next. I'm telling you, they got this guy 20 ways to Sunday.
But here's what my concern is with the defense and the cross examination. And Pat, curious to get your thoughts on this.
Hmm.
No evidence, no fingerprints, no evidence, no video, no neighbors saw Diddy's gotten.
Hmm.
There's no evidence that Diddy did this.
Hmm. Hmm.
However, Cassie did testify that Combs specifically threatened to blow up his car after learning about their fling. She
Hmm.
did testify to that, and then weeks later, it happened.
Right.
But so
Wasn't there a text to that effect? Didn't she send a text message, I think to her mother, indicating that Combs had threatened her and Cuddy? I think there was a text message that corroborated that.
right,
Either way, his propensity towards violence, beginning, like Nevin said, the domestic violence, it's just painting a picture that and then the weapons confiscated from his home. This thing of violence is going to be part of the terror employed, that he has this propensity, the ability that he won't hesitate to use violence. Again, look at the hotel security tape. He's kicking her in the head. So intimidation as a fear factor, terror, physical violence, this is all part of the buildup, and so they're starting, basically at a low burn, and
Right.
it's gonna get heated up. It's
Yeah.
gonna get
Um, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nevin.
Yeah, I agree with Pat. I'm telling you, you have to really let this thing play out. And you're going to see these next witnesses. We think he's a monster. They've already painted the picture. And I think everyone would agree, based on whether you're male or female, this guy's despicable as a human being, right? Now we're going next level. Now
Mhm,
he's but what's the next level?
mhm,
Here's the level he'll take it to.
mhm.
So it's beyond the domestic abuse,
Yeah.
which is everyone's like, well, where's the Rico? Where's the Rico?
Mhm.
This is a 9 inning game.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
in we're in
And
inning we're in
what are
inning
we?
two. Two.
I was just going to say, are we in inning two? The
Well,
judge said that he believes and feels that this will all be wrapped up by July 4th. So we've got the entire month of
right,
June,
right.
by the way, ahead of us.
Mhm. And
Pat, you mentioned
mhm,
the guns, and I
mhm,
want to share this with you again. This is
mhm.
what was revealed this week. Special Agent Gerald Gannon from the United States Homeland Security Investigation recovered from Diddy's home on Miami Beach, Star Island.
Mhm.
Nevin and I have been there. Nevin used to play hoops at Star Island. You ever go?
Hibiscus Island, right next door. Yes.
Okay, okay. Anyway, this is what they were able to retrieve from Diddy's house: parts of two AR-15 assault style rifles with defaced serial numbers,
That's a
materials
problem.
for freak offs, baby oil, lingerie, platform heels, sex toys, all of
Mhm,
it,
mhm.
and drugs allegedly found in Combs's residence, including a variety of pills, marijuana powders, and other drugs. Pat, explain the AR-15 assault rifle and the defaced serial numbers. What is that about? Explain
Okay.
that to everybody.
Okay. So that's a crime in and of itself to be in possession of a firearm with defaced or removed serial numbers. I don't know the quantity of narcotics that was confiscated during that search, but if it reaches a certain level where it's prima facie evidence of distribution, sale, delivery, he's an armed trafficker now because they tie in the weapons to the drugs. It just gets worse. The
Nevin?
I defer to Pat on this one.
Okay. Well, he's the expert
Well,
here.
I'd
well,
rather comment on the lube.
but go.
Okay. Well, actually, and I just want to share this. This came up in trial this week that I found interesting. Notes that the hotel put on Diddy's profile. Okay,
Mhm,
whenever he would check into a hotel, A, please monitor outside of his room down the hall, and please spray air freshener.
mhm,
2, always spills candle wax on everything and uses excess amounts of oil. Place the room out of order under departure for deep cleaning. And 3, please authorize an extra $1,000 when guests stay with us to cover any room damages. This was on the notes whenever Diddy checked into certain hotels.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. I think so. One comment about the lube and that stuff. I think that specifically is about establishing credibility from witnesses saying there was always lube and stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah,
I think that's a credibility
yeah,
stamp.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think that has anything to do with the case. I
No.
think that's just really just to quantify a witness's credibility,
Mhm.
and and
It's
and 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 that's what I think that is. I don't. I think the lubes they're making a lot of jokes about it, but I think that's what that's about, in my
yeah.
opinion.
It has a little bearing on the actual merits of the case.
Yeah.
However, the information corroborated that the mom took out a loan to pay Diddy. Again, it's a small amount, relatively speaking, but it still shows the propensity for extortion. Now we're getting back to Rico. Now we're getting back to a criminal enterprise.
Yeah, great point. So Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother, um, took the stand as well, and she testified in regard to two encounters with Diddy. One where her daughter came home to Connecticut. She said she took photographs of her daughter's physical injuries,
Mhm.
and somehow, some way,
Mhm.
Diddy made her pay him
Right.
$20,000, and she
Right.
said she had to take a loan out on the
Right.
house in
Right.
order to afford it. She paid him, but then she testified that he did return it to her. Didn't say why,
Or when.
but that happened. And then another time where he took her cell phone,
Mhm.
and she actually went after and
Mhm.
hit Diddy
Mhm.
and went after him.
Mhm.
Um, I don't even want to tell you what my mom would do to a
Mhm.
guy who did even half the stuff that
Mhm.
he did to Cassie, but nonetheless,
Well, I think
her
it's
mother did take the stand this week.
I think what's important there is to find out when did he return that money in the context of the case. Just because he returned it doesn't mean he didn't steal it or however he got it
There you
extorted.
go.
Yeah.
So the jury was released again. The judge has given them instructions to avoid any and all conversations, media coverage about the case. It's a long Memorial Day weekend. He said, "Don't talk to anyone." He also told them, "Watch the Knicks try to avenge their loss against the Pacers."
Mhm.
But I'm just out of curiosity, Pat. How difficult is that to do? Like, are you surprised that these jurors aren't sequestered and having to stay in a hotel somewhere?
I
Like,
am. I
I
am.
am too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I am. Definitely. Something like this kind of case, yes. With all the media attention, it's you can't hardly avoid it.
And it's Memorial Day weekend. You're going to be going to parties. You're going to be going to
Yeah.
barbecues. People know
Yeah.
you're on the jury. You
Mhm.
don't think people are going to try to discuss it with you?
Of course. Of course.
I,
Yeah,
I, I
you
don't I don't
anticipate that.
understand. Is
Yeah.
that a federal thing, or federal
No, they
juries?
could. No, they could do it. They could. The
So
judge
what?
could
So why
suggest
do you
it.
think they haven't?
I really don't know the reasoning behind it. I don't know. I mean, maybe because they anticipate a trial going till July. It's hard to keep a jury sequestered for that long. It's not a money thing. It's just keeping them uh,
Sane.
tuned in, interested. Um, so the issue of this sequestration is one that I had also. You would
Uh,
think they would
so
have done it.
so coming up Tuesday, starting next week, Capricorn Clark, a woman who was once Diddy's assistant. So another assistant is testifying next week, as well as representatives from the LA Police Department and the LA Fire Department, Pat.
Hmm. Hmm. So there's been medical services, EMT, things like that. People have been wounded, treated, um, overdoses you could look for. So there's going to be a lot on the fire rescue side.
Maybe a little like, hey, don't say anything.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Maybe
The
some
other
of that
thing,
next week.
the other thing is with police, he may have been hiring off-duty police as security.
So 2 weeks in the books. Let's end on this. 2 weeks in the books. Um, right now, if this was the Knicks against the Pacers, who's winning? Who's up right now? Nevin?
Right now, uh,
Do you feel the prosecution has done enough where we sit right
I
now?
think the prosecution is slowly taking the lead.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think the prosecution slowly taking the lead. The Kid Cudi thing for me was a real game changer. I think the other girl, Dawn Richard, I think she was a suspect,
Hmm.
flimsy witness.
Hmm.
Cassie set the tone. Not, I don't think it's the great. I don't think it's a huge like the French Connection type case with what Cassie was as a witness,
Hmm.
but I think it set the tone. I think the prosecution's ahead a little bit. Of course, cross examination, they're going to be poking at people's credibilities, and all you got to do is catch them lying once, and they're sort of like disqualified, right?
Hmm.
But I'd give the nod. It's a long game, Anita. I
Yeah.
just think.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. I know it's a short question, but I just want. So I watch this daily, right? I'm watching it because we have this thing going on, and I
Well,
want
we
to be
can't watch. You're not watching it. We're
Right.
not
you know what
watching
I'm
it, but
saying?
we're
I'm
following
holding.
it.
You're
We're
Yeah,
following
following
it.
it.
I'm
Okay.
watching it on
Yeah.
satellite tape delay per se,
Okay.
right? So and I listen to I read the comments, and I see this and that, and like, look, we all like, let's say a show like Grey's Anatomy. That doesn't mean we can go perform open heart surgery. The same way with this case, you got people commenting. Now all of a sudden, everybody's Johnny Cochran with a Harvard law degree. Let me tell you something. Okay, let me just be direct. And I'm sorry, I know we're able to use certain languages because when we feel it, we have to say it. These motherfuckers don't play, man. Okay? When they come for you, they come for you because they know they got you.
Of course.
They don't swing and miss.
No.
This is not a 40% knockout rate.
No.
It's 96 and up. And that doesn't mean I'm cheering for those guys because they're the ops to me. I hate them. But listen, when they come for you, they come for you. If you think they got one witness, Cassie, and that's going to be it, you're sadly mistaken.
You could tell to me, the death knell for the defense was, Anita, I don't know if you remember, there was recently a witness that the defense didn't even bother to cross-examine. Because sometimes it's so bad, don't make it worse, get them out of here. So I forget who it was, but it was a female, I believe, as a witness recently that wasn't even cross-examined. That tells you right there. They're not that they're throwing in the towel because he's entitled to a vigorous defense, as was Nevin. Nevin didn't get that. But to not even respond with a cross-examination lends credibility to the prosecution.
It's an admission of guilt right there.
Yeah.
Let's end on this because this was actually something I wanted to ask you about last week, Nevin, because you're familiar with this. But there has been some talk and speculation and some voices out of Diddy's camp that, well, if he gets convicted, Trump will pardon him.
Yeah, zero chance.
What are your thoughts on that, Nev?
There, zero.
Yeah.
Why?
No way. You're not getting a guy off who's, oh, that was illegal prosecution. This guy's disgusting. This guy's he's a despicable human being. Trump's got daughters, granddaughter. Despicable.
Pat, you agree with that? No chance.
Yeah.
No chance he gets a Trump pardon.
No way. Trump has his own problems, obviously, being Trump. He's definitely not going to put whatever political capital he has into Sean Combs's camp. Not worth it.
All right, gentlemen. Listen, Pat, I just feel like each and every week, I feel like Nevin and I, we're blessed. We're always joined by really, really great guests with such phenomenal insight. And one thing Nevin and I really hope the people who watch and subscribe to this podcast, when they're done watching it, leave more educated, more in the know, and a better understanding about what is transpiring throughout this trial. And you have done that, sir. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest. And thank
you. Really do appreciate it. Nevin, any final thoughts before we sign off? Memorial Day weekend, my friend.
Yeah. Man, can your Knicks get back? What a collapse.
They need to. They need to. By the way, we're recording this podcast on Friday. Knicks are playing. If the Knicks don't win tonight, they're losing the series. They need to win.
God, I couldn't believe it.
Really quick before we go, you're gonna love this. And again, so for folks who didn't watch the first podcast, Nevin and I went to high school. Nevin and I went to college together, and Nevin was one of the best athletes I've ever been around, believe it or not. And Nevin and I played flag football together, and we dominated the University of South Florida whenever we played co-ed flag football. And so Jenny Busek, who is the assistant coach on the Pacers, she's the real pretty blonde that sits next to Rick Carlisle. She played flag football with me in Miami.
Wow.
So wait, wow. Nev, you're gonna love this. So she took my flag football plays that I developed for Let It Fly, the 4-on-4.
I remember.
And she's implemented them into the Pacers game book, playbook. And the play where they won in overtime was one of my flag football plays that I drew up for us for Let It Fly.
I love it.
That's
great.
Cool.
I love those stories.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. How cool is that?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to tell too many Knicks fans because they're
Yeah.
gonna, I don't think they'll be happy about that.
Oh, great
But
story.
I know,
Great.
but pretty cool. Pretty Jenny
That's
Yeah,
great.
Buzek,
yeah, yeah.
phenomenal
By the
athlete,
way, Pat
and
Franklin right there is a South Florida bull.
Yes.
right.
Yes.
He's a bull.
Yes. I'm a Brahmin.
Oh wow.
Uh huh.
Yeah,
Uh
I
huh.
forgot to tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
We
great.
went to the
That's
same
great.
college. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
I got you beat
Awesome.
by a few years, but I opened the school.
Well, gentlemen, again, I really do appreciate it. I always leave more knowledgeable myself whenever I host these with
That's
Nevin
great.
and our special guest.
That's great.
So make sure you guys have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you,
Again, for
Anita.
everybody watching, we so appreciate it. So make sure, of course, comment. We touched on a lot today. We do read your comments. We'll reply, subscribe. If you can recommend this show to your friends and family. Again, we pride ourselves not just being a TMZ, but also providing you some really educated analysis, so that you can watch this trial and understand it in the best of your ability.
We
So
go beyond the mark.
that's
Right.
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 We put you on the mark. So everybody have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you next week.
Thank
All
you.
right.